Key Glock just told Yo Gotti he ain't welcome in Memphis no more. And Yo Gotti, the man who built a $100 million empire off that city, the man whose label CMG literally put Memphis on the mainstream map, just got told by his biggest rival's protege that the city don't belong to him no more. Y'all need to hear this, because what Key Glock did wasn't just some subliminal tweet or a bar on a throwaway track. This man made it crystal clear, publicly, that as far as PRE is concerned, Yo Gotti's name don't ring the same way in those Memphis streets. And when Gotti caught wind of it, let me tell you, that reaction said everything, because this ain't just about two rappers talking crazy on the internet. This is about who really owns Memphis. This is about a war that started over a record deal in 2014, left bodies in the streets, put people in prison for life, and still, to this day, ain't over. Not even close. And the craziest part, Yo Gotti's own artists are starting to distance themselves from the beef. His own camp is splintering. The man who controlled Memphis for over a decade is watching his grip slip in real time, and Key Glock is the one pulling it away from him finger by finger. So let me break the whole thing down for y'all from the jump, because the story behind this moment goes way deeper than most people realize. We talking about murder, we talking about $100,000 bounties, we talking about court testimonies that expose things nobody was supposed to know, and we talking about one rapper standing up and saying, "Enough is enough, this city is ours now." Alright fam, to understand why Key Glock saying Yo Gotti can't come back to Memphis hits different, we gotta rewind the clock, and I mean all the way back. See, Memphis ain't like other cities when it comes to hip-hop. In Memphis, the rap game and the street game been intertwined since 3-6 Mafia was running around in the 90s. This city don't play about loyalty. You either with somebody or you against them. There's no in-between, and that's exactly why when Young Dolph turned down Yo Gotti's record deal back in 2014, it set off a chain of events that would literally change Memphis forever. Here's the thing, Yo Gotti had been running the Memphis rap scene for years. He had CMG, originally called Cocaine Music Group before 50 Cent told him to change it because corporate America would be scared of that name. Gotti had the connects, the Interscope partnership, the whole machine. And when Young Dolph started buzzing off his mixtapes, high-class street music, all that, Gotti wanted him. He wanted Dolph on that roster bad, but Dolph said no, and that's the thing about Dolph that people gotta understand. This man was independent to his core. He wasn't about to give up ownership of his music, his brand, or his paper route empire for nobody, not even the biggest rapper in his own city. Dolph later signed a distribution deal with Empire Distribution, and his paper route empire became a fully self-sustained label. He was proving you could make it out of Memphis without kissing the ring. And in a city where Yo Gotti had essentially positioned himself as the gatekeeper, that was revolutionary, that was dangerous. And that right there, that no changed everything. Because in Memphis, turning down a powerful man ain't just business. In the streets, that can be taken as disrespect, and that's exactly how it played out. You gotta understand, Gotti wasn't just a rapper. Forbes estimated his net worth at around $100 million. He had CMG partnered with Interscope. He had Moneybag Yo, Black Youngsta, 42 Doug, ESTG, and later Glorilla and Big Boogie on his roster. This man was building an empire, and when Dolph said no and then started competing with him on the charts, that wasn't just disrespect, that was a threat to the entire business model. For a couple years, things stayed relatively quiet. Subliminal here, a side-eye there, but nothing crazy. Then February 2016 happened. Dolph went on Twitter and started calling out this unnamed person, Bra, saying they were hating on him after wanting to sign him. Everybody and they mama knew he was talking about Gotti. But here's the move that really set it off. A week later, Dolph announced his debut album would be called King of Memphis. Now, if you know anything about Yo Gotti, you know that man had been calling himself the King of Memphis for years. That was his title, and Dolph just snatched it and slapped it on an album cover. The streets went crazy. That's when Black Youngsta got involved, and this is where things start getting real dangerous, fam. Youngsta, who was signed to CMG, started going at Dolph on Instagram, threatening violence. He literally pulled up to Dolph's neighborhood in South Memphis making videos trying to prove he was about that action. He was walking through Castalia, Dolph's hood, with his crew filming the whole thing like it was a music video. Dolph didn't flinch though. He just tweeted a laughing emoji and a thumbs down and kept it moving like it was a joke to him. But it wasn't a joke to everybody else. Because when an artist on your rival's label shows up to your neighborhood making threats on camera, that's not entertainment. That's an escalation. And Youngsta didn't stop there. He dropped a diss track called Shake Some where he went directly at Dolph. The lyrics were aggressive, talking about extended clips, 100 rounds, questioning how Dolph could call himself King of Memphis when he wasn't even originally from the city proper. It was personal, it was threatening, and it was coming from somebody wearing a CMG chain. Gotti tried to play it cool publicly. He went on record saying he didn't approve of Youngsta's approach, but Dolph wasn't buying it. He called Gotti out on Instagram, saying the whole thing was orchestrated from the top. And honestly, looking back at everything that happened after, it's hard to argue with Dolph on that one. Now here's where the beef went from rap beef to something way more serious, way more deadly. February 2017, Dolph drops a track called Play Wit Yo Bitch. And this ain't subliminal at all. He's naming Gotti directly, calling him Ho Gotti. The cover art? A screenshot of what appeared to be Gotti's baby mama calling Dolph's phone. This man was poking the bear with a stick, y'all, and the response? It wasn't just a diss track back. On February 25th, 2017, young Dolph was in Charlotte, North Carolina when his SUV got shot up. And I don't mean a couple bullets. I mean over 100 rounds were fired into his vehicle. 100. The whole thing was caught on surveillance. The van involved in the shooting was later traced back to a rental under Black Youngsta's name. Think about that for a second. The van used in a shooting on Dolph was rented by an artist signed to Yo Gotti's label. That's not speculation. That's a fact that came out during the investigation. But here's the crazy part. Dolph survived. You know why? Because this man was riding around in a bulletproof truck. He literally prepared for this. He knew what was coming and he armored up.
A crash and a chase there. That person was taken into custody. According to witnesses here, they don't think that person was targeted. It was just a random shooting. And here's what one witness said happened.
And what does Dolph do after surviving 100 shots? He names his next project Bulletproof and drops it 34 days later. This man was different, fam. He was fearless in a way that was either inspiring or terrifying, depending on which side of the beef you were standing on. He even made a single called 100 Shots, turning the whole assassination attempt into a flex. That's the kind of individual young Dolph was. Then, September 2017, Dolph gets shot again. This time in Hollywood, outside a hotel. Multiple gunshot wounds. They rushed him to the hospital in critical condition. TMZ initially reported that Yo Gotti was a person of interest. Now LAPD later clarified that Gotti himself wasn't a suspect, but they did arrest one of his associates, a man named Corey McClendon. McClendon got released without charges after 2 days. But the streets had already made up their minds about who was behind it. Dolph survived that one too. 2 shootings in 1 year and the man was still standing, still dropping music, still calling himself King of Memphis. And through all of this, Key Glock, young Dolph's cousin, his protege, his right hand, was watching everything, taking notes, building his own legacy right alongside Dolph under Paper Route Empire. Let me break down who Key Glock is for the people who might not fully know his story, because this context matters. Markevius Cathy, that's his real name, was born in South Memphis in 1997. And from jump, this kid had it rough. His mama went to prison when he was only 20 months old. Not 20 months. Let me say that again. He was a baby. She got sentenced to 15 years. His father was in and out. So Glock got raised by his grandmother and his auntie. And it was through that family connection that he met his older cousin, young Dolph. Now, here's what's important about Glock. Even though he and Dolph were tight, eating together, hanging at family functions, Glock never tried to mooch off Dolph's success. He had too much pride for that. He had his own independent grind. But Dolph was a real one. He saw the hustle in Glock and reached out to bring him into Paper Route Empire. Dolph became his mentor, his big brother, his business partner, and from there, Glock took off. Glock's season in 2017 put him on the map. Then came the collab projects with Dolph. Dumb and Dumber in 2019 was a moment. They even toured Europe together, bringing out UK rapper Blade Brown in Manchester and London. They went back-to-back with bangers. Yellow Tape in 2020 debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 and eventually went gold. Yellow Tape 2 in 2021 went even higher. Number 7. The single Ambition for Cash went multi-platinum. His mixtape Son of a Gun dropped with 0 features. That became his trademark. No features, ever, just Key Glock. He was becoming a superstar in his own right, and he was doing it the Paper Route way. Independent, authentic, raw Memphis music. And let me tell you what made Glock special compared to other artists coming up in that era. This man grew up listening to 3 6 Mafia, Project Pat, Gucci Mane, Lil Wayne. He said Project Pat was the Drake of Memphis, and that Pat's song Gorilla Pimp literally changed his life. The chorus of that song inspired one of his biggest early records, Dig That. So when Glock was making music, he wasn't just rapping. He was channeling the entire history of Memphis hip-hop through his sound, and Dolph recognized that immediately. But the whole time this rise was happening, the war between CMG and PRE was simmering in the background. Black Youngsta dropped subliminal tracks. There were whispers about banning people from certain neighborhoods. The tension was real, and Key Glock wasn't backing down from any of it. When Youngsta dropped I Met Tay Keith First, which was a subliminal at Glock since Glock and Tay Keith were high school friends, Glock was in the comments immediately calling it cap. This man stood on everything for PRE. And then came the day that changed everything. November 17th, 2021. Young Dolph, the man who survived 100 shots, who survived getting shot in Hollywood, who had been targeted multiple times and kept getting back up, walked into Makita's homemade butter cookies in Memphis. He was there buying cookies before his annual Thanksgiving turkey giveaway, and two men walked in and opened fire. 22 bullets hit Dolph. He was killed right there in that bakery, in broad daylight, in his own city. When Key Glock found out he was on Instagram Live, fans watched in real time as the news hit him. He just stopped talking, cut the feed, went silent, and then he went ghost, deleted his Instagram, moved out of Memphis. This man was in pain that most of us can't even imagine. He lost his cousin, his mentor, his brother, the person who believed in him when nobody else did. Images surfaced later of Glock at a Young Dolph celebration of life event, and fam, the pain in his eyes was undeniable. You could see it eating him alive. He lost multiple family members around that same period too. His father, his auntie, his grandmother. It was like the world was trying to break him. But here's what the streets don't always tell you. Grief can turn into something else. It can turn into motivation. It can turn into rage. And for Key Glock, it turned into both. Now here's where people started connecting the dots, and the picture that emerged was disturbing. The two shooters were identified, Cornelius Smith and Justin Johnson, who went by the rap name Straight Drop. They were arrested. Justin Johnson was convicted of first-degree murder in 2024 and sentenced to life in prison. But the question everybody wanted answered was, who ordered the hit? Enter Hernandez Govan. Prosecutors charged Govan with first-degree murder and conspiracy, claiming he was the mastermind who organized the killing. And during the trial, the testimony that came out was jaw-dropping. Cornelius Smith took the stand and testified that Yo Gotti's brother, Anthony Big Jook Mims, had placed bounties on multiple PRE members. And I'm talking actual dollar amounts, fam. $100,000 on Young Dolph, $50,000 on Key Glock, $50,000 on PRE Wu, $20,000 on Snoopy Bands, $5,000 on Moochie Grape. This wasn't just beef. According to the prosecution, this was a hit list, an actual organized hit list with prices on people's heads. Prosecutors laid out how Govan allegedly connected Smith and Johnson with Big Jook, how he told them Dolph would be in Memphis for the Thanksgiving turkey giveaway, how he allegedly supplied the guns. Phone records show dozens of calls between Govan, Smith, Johnson, and Big Jook leading up to and on the day of the murder. The prosecution painted a picture of a coordinated conspiracy tied directly to the CMG camp. But then, and this is where it gets even crazier, the jury didn't buy it. After only about 3 hours of deliberation in August 2025, Hernandez Govan was acquitted on all charges. Not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. He walked free. Govan's defense attorney called Smith a pathological liar who would say anything to get a lighter sentence. They argued the phone records didn't directly incriminate Govan. No DNA, no physical evidence tying him to the crime beyond Smith's testimony, and the jury agreed. When that verdict came down, Key Glock took to social media and posted something that said everything in just a few words. He wrote, "My city failed, but what's new?" Then he deleted it, but the internet had already screenshotted it. The frustration was palpable. Dolph's family was described as distraught by the district attorney. The lead prosecutor said the family didn't blame the trial team, but the disappointment was overwhelming. And let me tell you something, that moment right there, that's the fuel behind everything Key Glock has been doing since. Because think about it from his perspective. His cousin gets killed. The man accused of organizing it walks free. The alleged bounties trace back to his rival label's inner circle. And nobody from the CMG side has ever publicly acknowledged or addressed any of it. Yo Gotti has never publicly commented on his brother Big Jook's alleged involvement, never addressed the hit list. Radio silence. Now, if you thought the story ended with the trial, you're wrong, because here's what happened before any of that testimony even came out. January 13th, 2024, a Saturday afternoon. Anthony Big Jook Mims, Yo Gotti's older brother, the man prosecutors would later allege put out the bounty on young Dolph, was attending a repast after a funeral at Perignon Restaurant on Winchester Road in Memphis. At approximately 4:15 p.m., gunmen opened fire. Big Jook was hit multiple times. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. The thing is, the location wasn't far from where Dolph himself was killed. Same area of Memphis, same type of brazen, broad daylight shooting, and the streets immediately started making connections. Was this retaliation for Dolph? The internet was on fire with speculation. Police released surveillance photos of a white Ford Explorer they believed the shooters used. But as of now, over 2 years later, no arrests have been made. Nobody has been charged. Big Jook's last Instagram post before he died carried an eerie message. He posted a selfie with the caption about staying alert to stay alive and watching your back at all times. That was Friday. He was dead by Saturday. After Big Jook's funeral, the security presence was unlike anything Memphis had ever seen. Snipers on rooftops, helicopters circling overhead, massive police presence. This wasn't a funeral. This was a militarized zone. And when Yo Gotti showed up at the 2025 BET Awards, people reported his security detail looked like a presidential motorcade. Multiple vehicles, armed guards everywhere. This man was moving like he was the most targeted individual in hip-hop. So now you got the full picture. You understand the history, you understand the bodies, you understand the court cases, and now you understand why when Key Glock said Yo Gotti ain't welcome in Memphis no more, it wasn't just talk. It was a statement that carried the weight of everything we just went through. Because here's what's happening now. Key Glock isn't the grieving kid who deleted his Instagram anymore. This man came back. He dropped Proud as a tribute to Dolph that hit the Billboard Hot 100. He released Glaucoma 2, and then in 2025 he signed with Republic Records, his first major label partnership, while still keeping Paper Route Empire intact. He dropped Glockavelli, an 18-track project with 0 features that debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200, 34,000 units first week, over 37 million streams. He went on a 21-city tour. He headlined sold-out shows across the country. And by early 2026, he was already back in the studio, confirming his next album was finished. Key Glock didn't just survive the war between CMG and PRE, he's winning it. And more than that, he's carrying young Dolph's legacy on his back every single day. He runs Paper Route Empire. He keeps Dolph's name alive through music, through charity, through the culture. The Glockavelli album had producers like Tay Keith, DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia, and King Wonka injecting that heavy southern bass and bounce into the project. The album title itself was an homage to Tupac's Machiavelli era, reinvention, resilience, rebellion against industry norms. And just like Pac, Glock was using his music to channel personal loss, street realities, and the pressure of success into something meaningful. He even told Wonderland magazine that the statement he was making with Glockavelli was highly respected. That's all he needed to say. 2 words, because the music spoke for itself. And by March 2026, he was back in the studio previewing unreleased music on Instagram, confirming his next album was already finished. This man is not slowing down for anybody. And the message to Yo Gotti is clear. You might have the $100 million empire, you might have CMG, you might have Moneybagg Yo and Glorilla and Big Boogie on your roster. But Memphis, the heart of Memphis, that belongs to PRE now. And that's what makes Gotti's reaction so telling, because even Big Boogie, a CMG artist signed directly to Gotti, went on camera in early 2026 and basically said he stays neutral. He told Cam Newton straight up that just because he wears the CMG chain doesn't mean he's getting involved in the beef. He said he's trying to be a CEO, not an OG. He said if his name ain't brought up, he ain't voicing his opinion. When your own artist is publicly distancing himself from the war, that tells you something about the state of things. So where does Yo Gotti stand in all this? Here's the real tea. Gotti has been remarkably silent through all of this. He never publicly addressed his brother Big Jook's alleged role in ordering the hit on young Dolph. He never responded to the bounty list testimony that came out during the trial. He never publicly commented on Big Jook's murder. He hasn't engaged with Key Glock or PRE publicly at all. And that silence, in Memphis, that silence speaks louder than any diss track ever could. Some people interpret Gotti's silence as smart business. Why engage when you've got a $100 million empire to protect? Why say something that could implicate you legally? And honestly, from a pure business standpoint, that makes sense. The man has CMG, the Interscope Partnership, a roster of successful artists, restaurants, real estate. He's got everything to lose and nothing to gain by talking. But on the street level, in the culture, silence looks like guilt. Silence looks like fear. And when Key Glock makes a public declaration that you ain't welcome in your own city, the city you built your whole brand around, and you say nothing back, people notice that. The streets notice that. The culture notices that. And that's the irony of this whole situation. Yo Gotti named himself the King of Memphis. He built CMG out of that city. He used Memphis as his foundation for everything. And now, the heir to his biggest rival's throne is telling him he can't come back. And Gotti, the man who allegedly had the muscle, the money, the infrastructure to do whatever he wanted in those streets, isn't saying a word. Meanwhile, Key Glock is thriving. He's touring, he's charting, he's building. He even had his crew caught with loaded Glocks at Governor's Ball in New York in 2025, which, whether you approve of it or not, tells you something about the level of security consciousness this man operates with. When you've had a $50,000 bounty allegedly placed on your head by the brother of your rival, you move different. Point blank, period. So let's zoom out and talk about what all this really means, because this isn't just about Yo Gotti and Key Glock. This is about Memphis. This is about the culture. This is about what happens when rap beef crosses the line from entertainment to real-life consequences. Memphis has lost too many people to this war. Young Dolph, Big Jook, associates and affiliates on both sides. The city has been literally split in half between CMG and PRE for over a decade now. And it's not just the violence. The cultural divide runs deep too. When Glorilla signed with Yo Gotti's CMG, people immediately dug up old tweets where she was praising Young Dolph and posting pictures with him from her high school days. The backlash was instant. Fans called her a sellout, said she switched sides. That's how deep this goes. You can't even sign to a label in Memphis without people questioning your loyalty to one side or the other. And the justice system? It hasn't delivered closure for anybody. Justin Johnson got life, sure, but Hernandez Govan walked. Cornelius Smith, who admitted to being one of the actual shooters, still hasn't gone to trial. His charges, first-degree murder and conspiracy, are still pending with no trial date set. Big Jook's murder remains unsolved with no suspects identified. And the bigger questions about who really orchestrated what remain unanswered. One of the accused shooters even alleged that Yo Gotti's CMG label paid for his lawyer. Think about what that implies if it's true. Key Glock banning Yo Gotti from Memphis is symbolic of something bigger. It's a younger generation saying, we're taking control of the narrative now. It's PRE saying, we didn't die with Dolph. We're stronger than ever. And it's a reminder that in Memphis, loyalty isn't just a word you put on a chain, and it's a code you live and die by. Literally. The question now is, what happens next? Does Gotti respond? Does he try to reclaim his standing in the city he built his name on? Or does he accept that the Memphis landscape has shifted and focus on the business side, the national brand, the money that doesn't require him to be in those streets? Because right now, it seems like Key Glock has already made the decision. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night about this whole situation. Young Dolph refused to sign with Yo Gotti in 2014. That one decision, that one no, led to diss tracks, to shootings, to murder, to trials, to acquittals, to more murder, and now to a generational shift in who controls Memphis hip-hop. One decision, 12 years of consequences, and it's still not over. So what do y'all think? Is Key Glock right for drawing that line? Can Yo Gotti ever truly go back to Memphis the same way? And most importantly, when does the cycle of violence in this city finally end? Because right now we got a situation where the new generation of Memphis rap is being defined not by who makes the best music, but by who survived the longest. And that ain't right. That ain't what hip-hop was supposed to be about. But I'll say this, what Key Glock is doing is remarkable. This man took the worst tragedy of his life, the murder of his brother and mentor, and turned it into fuel. He's carrying PRE on his shoulders. He's proven that independence still matters. He's showing the world that you don't need to compromise your values or switch sides to make it. And in a city where the streets have taken so much from so many people, that's a powerful message. Yo Gotti might have the money. He might have the corporate partnerships. He might have the billboard placements. But Key Glock has something that money can't buy. He has the streets. He has the loyalty. He has Memphis. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story hit different for you the way it hit different for me, make sure you subscribe, because we're going to keep breaking these stories down. No filter, no cap, just the truth. Long live Dolph, paper route forever.